Imagine a life filled with devotion. A preacher and his wife leading a congregation, a symbol of faith and love for their community. Their family, a picture of harmony, held together by shared beliefs and deep trust. They were the kind of couple people looked up to, admired, and envied. Together, they raised 4 children, each growing up in a home filled with laughter, warmth, and the kind of stability many dream of. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. The preacher's wife wasn't just a mother and a spiritual pillar. She was also a highly accomplished nurse at UCLA Medical Center, one of the most prestigious hospitals in California. Her reputation in the medical community was impeccable. She was a dedicated professional who saved lives daily, balancing the demands of her career with the responsibilities of her home. To the outside world, she was the epitome of success, a devoted wife, a loving mother, and a respected healthcare provider. But behind the closed doors of their family's perfect facade, cracks began to form, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A lingering shadow hung over their lives, a secret that she carried with her every day. For years, she had managed to keep it buried, carefully hidden from everyone she loved. The trust her husband placed in her was absolute. He believed in her with unwavering faith. And her children, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around them, saw their mother as their hero. What no one could have imagined, what no one could have suspected, was that this seemingly perfect woman was concealing something so devastating, so life-altering, that it would ultimately destroy the foundation of their lives. As we reflect on this real-life story, subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more daily stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button, and let us hear from you in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's continue. It all began years earlier, long before she had married the preacher. There was a chapter of her life that she had locked away, never to be spoken of again. An affair with her ex-boyfriend, a man from her past, had seemed like a fleeting mistake, something she could leave behind and forget. But this one act of indiscretion left her with more than just regret. Unbeknownst to her at the time, it also left her with a virus that would change the trajectory of her life and the lives of everyone around her. When she met the preacher, she was ready for a fresh start. She built a new life, filled with faith and promise, determined to leave her past behind. She told herself that the past couldn't hurt her anymore, that it was irrelevant to the life she was creating. And for a while, it seemed like she was right. The family thrived, their bond growing stronger each day. But secrets have a way of festering. They don't simply stay hidden. They find cracks to seep through, unraveling even the most tightly knit lives. What started as a lie of omission became a dangerous web of deceit. Her silence about her diagnosis wasn't just a matter of personal guilt or fear. It became a ticking time bomb that endangered the very people she vowed to protect. The first signs were subtle, an unexplained illness here, a bout of fatigue there. The preacher, once full of energy and passion, began to grow weaker. Their children, too, started showing symptoms that puzzled doctors. One by one, they were diagnosed with unexplained infections that didn't fit any pattern. It wasn't long before medical professionals at UCLA Medical Center, where the preacher's wife worked, started to take notice. As the symptoms worsened, so did the questions. How could an entire family, seemingly healthy, suddenly fall ill? The answer lay in a truth so devastating that even she had trouble facing it. For years, she had lived with HIV, a diagnosis she had never disclosed to her husband, her children, or anyone else. She had managed the virus quietly, ensuring her health remained stable enough to avoid suspicion. But her silence came at a cost. The preacher, his faith shaken but his love unwavering, began to question everything. How could the woman he trusted with his life, the mother of his children, have kept something so critical from him? And worse, how had she allowed it to spread to him and their innocent children? As the investigation into their illnesses deepened, the shocking truth began to surface. Medical records, hidden for years, revealed that the wife had been diagnosed long before she even met the preacher. Her ex-boyfriend, the source of the infection, had also known about his status and had chosen not to disclose it to her. It was a chain of deception that had catastrophic consequences. The fallout from this revelation was nothing short of catastrophic. The preacher, a man who had dedicated his life to guiding others through faith, now found himself grappling with anger, betrayal, and unimaginable grief. His congregation, once a source of strength and solace, became a reminder of the facade he had unknowingly upheld. Their children, innocent victims of this deadly lie, faced an uncertain future. The virus, which had been passed to them unknowingly, would affect them for the rest of their lives. As they struggled to come to terms with their diagnoses, they also had to process the emotional weight of their mother's betrayal. Through interviews, testimonies, and evidence, the story unfolded piece by painful piece. The wife, once revered as a hero in her profession and a pillar of her community, became a figure of controversy. How could someone who devoted her life to saving others have risked the lives of her own family? In the end, the case left more questions than answers. Was the wife a victim of circumstance, a woman trapped by fear and guilt, or was she complicit in a crime of neglect and deception? The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. As the credits roll on this haunting story, one question lingers. How far would you go to protect your secrets? And at what cost? In the heart of a picturesque California town, where sunny skies met a tight-knit community, a family of 6 seemed to have it all. The preacher and his wife were cornerstones of their community. Their modest home stood as a beacon of faith, love, and unity, a reflection of the values they held dear. From their garden where the children played to the local church where the preacher delivered heartfelt sermons, their lives radiated peace and stability. The preacher's wife was more than just a supportive spouse of a man devoted to his congregation. She was a respected and accomplished nurse at UCLA Medical Center, one of California's premier hospitals. Her colleagues admired her for her expertise, compassion, and unyielding dedication to saving lives. Day after day, she balanced the high-pressure demands of her profession with the responsibilities of raising 4 children, all while maintaining an image of grace and perfection. But beneath this carefully constructed image lay a secret, one that had the power to destroy everything she held dear. Years before she had met her husband, before she stood at the altar and vowed to love and cherish him, she had been involved in a relationship with another man. He was a chapter in her life she had worked hard to erase, a fleeting connection that she thought would remain buried in the past. That relationship, however, had left her with far more than just memories. Her former partner had knowingly exposed her to HIV, a fact she wouldn't discover until later. When the diagnosis came, it was a devastating blow. But instead of confronting the reality of her situation, she chose silence. It was a decision born of fear, shame, and a desperate desire to start anew. When she met the preacher, she believed she had found her second chance, a chance to rewrite her story and build a life free of the shadows of her past. She convinced herself that the virus didn't define her, that her silence was a form of protection for the man she had grown to love. So, she kept her diagnosis a secret, even as their relationship blossomed into marriage and they started a family. From the outside, their lives were picture-perfect. The preacher was a beloved figure, known for his wisdom and compassion, a man who dedicated his life to guiding others in their faith. His wife was equally revered, a pillar of strength who seemed to embody the balance between career and family. Their children were bright, happy, and full of promise, growing up in a home filled with warmth and stability. But there were cracks in the foundation, small and almost imperceptible at first. The wife's past wasn't as buried as she had hoped, and the lies she carried began to weigh heavier with each passing year. Despite her efforts to compartmentalize her life, the truth had a way of creeping into the corners, threatening to unravel everything. The true irony was that she worked in one of the most advanced medical facilities in the country, a place dedicated to uncovering and treating illnesses. She spent her days diagnosing others, ensuring they received the care and truth they needed to heal. And yet, she denied her own family the very same honesty. The preacher trusted her implicitly, never questioning her judgment or decisions. To him, she was the rock that held their family together. Their children adored her, seeing her as a hero who could do no wrong. She carried this trust and adoration like a fragile glass, terrified of the moment it might shatter. Yet, secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when they are built on foundations as fragile as hers. Slowly, the perfect life she had constructed began to show signs of strain. The preacher, once a figure of unwavering energy, started to experience unexplained bouts of fatigue and illness. His symptoms were puzzling, a stark contrast to the robust health he had always enjoyed. The children, too, began to show signs of inexplicable health issues, symptoms that baffled doctors and resisted diagnosis. One by one, the family began to unravel, their lives overshadowed by a mystery they couldn't understand. The juxtaposition of their idyllic life with the growing darkness created a sense of unease that no one in the family could fully articulate. Neighbors noticed the change but attributed it to the normal stresses of life. Only the preacher's wife understood the truth, and the weight of her silence became unbearable. I do hope you have subscribed already, as it is about to get really interesting. Every day at Uckler Medical Center, as she walked the sterile hallways and cared for patients, she was haunted by the knowledge of what she had done. The very institution that was a symbol of healing and hope for so many became a constant reminder of the secret she harbored. The contrast between her professional life and her personal deception created a tension that could no longer be ignored. And yet, she held on, convincing herself that the truth would do more harm than good. She told herself that her silence was a form of protection, that her family didn't need to know. But deep down, she knew that the lies were eroding the very foundation of the life she had built. The preacher, always attuned to the emotional undercurrents of his family, began to sense that something was amiss. His once vibrant wife seemed more distant, her smile more forced. The children, too, noticed the subtle changes, the moments when their mother seemed lost in thought, as if carrying a burden too heavy to share. As the family's health continued to decline, the questions grew louder. Doctors were baffled, their tests revealing anomalies that didn't fit any known pattern. The community, once so full of admiration for the preacher and his wife, began to whisper, their curiosity fueled by the mystery surrounding the family's sudden troubles. It was only a matter of time before the truth began to surface, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. What started as a lie of omission became a story of betrayal, heartbreak, and consequences far beyond anything the preacher's wife could have imagined. The revelation began with a single, life-altering diagnosis, a secret the preacher's wife had carried with her for years. During her affair with her ex-boyfriend years before marrying the preacher, she contracted HIV. At the time, she had been unaware of his status and had no reason to suspect the danger. By the time she received her diagnosis, she had moved on, leaving that chapter of her life behind and marrying a man who trusted her implicitly. But instead of confronting the truth, she made a choice, one she would regret for the rest of her life. She buried the diagnosis, told no one, and resolved to carry on as if nothing had happened. Her reasoning, twisted by fear and denial, was simple. If no one knew, no one would be hurt. Yet, secrets like hers don't stay hidden forever. The virus, silent and insidious, spread from her to the preacher and eventually to their 4 children. None of them had any idea of the invisible danger that had infiltrated their lives. It wasn't until years later, when symptoms began to emerge, that the devastating truth started to come to light. She knew she was walking a tightrope, carefully maintaining her secret for so long. Every day, she lived with the knowledge that her silence could one day unravel, but she never imagined the scale of the devastation it would bring. The evidence was irrefutable. The family's medical records showed a pattern that could no longer be ignored. It was the preacher's declining health that raised the first red flag. What started as mild fatigue progressed into frequent illnesses that couldn't be explained. He was a man of strong faith and even stronger will, but no amount of prayer or determination seemed to restore his strength. The children, too, began showing symptoms, one after another. Fevers, recurrent infections, and unexplained illnesses became part of their lives. Doctors at Uckler Medical Center, where the wife worked as a nurse, were baffled. Test after test yielded no clear answers, but the symptoms pointed to something far more serious. Eventually, as their health deteriorated, deeper testing revealed the shocking truth. Each family member tested positive for HIV. The results were a devastating blow, and the question on everyone's mind was the same: how could this have happened? The investigation into the source of the virus revealed the wife's long-hidden secret. It became clear that the infection had started with her, passed unknowingly to her husband and then their children. The timeline aligned perfectly: her past affair, her diagnosis, and the years of silence that followed. Her ex-boyfriend, the man who had first infected her, was traced through medical records. He had been diagnosed years earlier and had knowingly exposed her to the virus. Whether his actions were malicious or simply negligent was unclear, but the consequences were undeniable. The wife, in turn, had continued the chain of infection, her silence perpetuating the tragedy. The weight of her decisions came crashing down as the truth unfolded. The preacher, a man who had dedicated his life to guiding others through their darkest moments, now found himself grappling with unimaginable betrayal. Their children, innocent victims, faced a future forever changed by the choices of their mother. The incident sent shockwaves through their community. The preacher's wife, once respected as a top nurse and a devoted spouse, became the subject of scrutiny and judgment. How could someone who had dedicated her life to healing others have kept such a deadly secret? The story wasn't just about a family destroyed by a virus. It was about trust, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of silence. Each revelation added another layer to the tragedy, drawing the community and the nation into a story that would haunt them for years to come. The investigation began as a medical mystery. The preacher's health was the first red flag, his once vigorous demeanor giving way to unexplained fatigue and recurrent illnesses. As weeks turned into months, his condition grew more concerning. His children, too, began showing similar symptoms: persistent fevers, weight loss, and frequent infections. The family's doctor was at a loss, as routine tests yielded no clear answers. When the preacher was referred to Uckler Medical Center for specialized testing, the true scope of the issue began to emerge. Specialists there, including some of the brightest minds in infectious diseases, began to connect the dots. Blood tests revealed a shocking and devastating diagnosis. The preacher and all 4 of his children were HIV positive. The revelation set off a wave of confusion and suspicion. How could an entire family contract the virus? The possibility of a medical error or exposure through some environmental factor was quickly ruled out. The only possible explanation was transmission within the family itself. But how, and from whom? The wife, who worked as a top nurse at Uckler Medical Center, initially feigned ignorance, expressing shock and heartbreak over her family's diagnosis. To the investigators and medical experts, her reaction seemed genuine. But as the team delved deeper into the family's history, inconsistencies began to surface. Detective Marcus Grant, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, was brought onto the case. Working alongside Dr. Evelyn Carter, an infectious disease expert, the two began piecing together the evidence. Their investigation started with the wife's medical history. As a healthcare professional, she had undergone routine health screenings throughout her career. These records revealed an unsettling detail. She had tested positive for HIV years earlier, well before her marriage to the preacher. The information had been carefully omitted from her family's medical history, raising immediate suspicion. Interviews with colleagues at Uckler Medical Center painted a picture of a woman who was meticulous and professional, someone who seemed to have her life perfectly under control. None of them could have guessed the secret she had been hiding. The investigation took a dramatic turn when the wife's ex-boyfriend was located. He confirmed that they had been in a relationship years before she married the preacher. What's more, he admitted that he had been diagnosed with it during that time. Though he claimed he hadn't known his status when they were together, his confession added a critical piece to the puzzle. Detective Grant and Dr. Carter began reconstructing the timeline. The wife had contracted the virus from her ex, concealed her diagnosis, and unknowingly passed it to her husband. Through natural family dynamics, births, close contact, and daily life, the virus spread to her children. Hospital records and testimony from the ex solidified the case against her. What initially appeared to be a tragic coincidence now seemed to be the result of years of deliberate concealment. The wife's silence wasn't just a personal failing. It was a decision that had irrevocably changed the lives of those she claimed to love most. The emotional weight of the investigation was palpable. Detective Grant, hardened by years of working similar cases, admitted that this one felt different. It's not just about the crime. It's about the human lives that were destroyed because someone chose silence over truth, he later remarked. Dr. Carter, too, found herself grappling with the duality of the wife's actions. As a nurse, the wife had dedicated her life to healing others, and yet she had failed to protect her own family from a preventable tragedy. As the evidence mounted, the wife's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Confronted with the findings, she could no longer deny the truth. The investigation had uncovered the dark secret she had spent years hiding, and there was no escaping the consequences. The case took an unexpected turn when detectives brought the wife's ex-boyfriend in for questioning. Initially, he had admitted to his past relationship with her and his HIV diagnosis, but a deeper investigation revealed something far more disturbing. He confessed that he had been aware of his status before they rekindled their affair. While the wife claimed ignorance during their time together, his admission cast doubt on her story and suggested a deeper web of deception. Detective Grant pressed him for details. The ex described how their affair had been brief but intense, taking place during a tumultuous period in the wife's life. At the time, she had been uncertain about her future with the preacher and sought solace in a familiar face. When asked why he hadn't disclosed his status, the ex shrugged, citing denial and fear. "I thought if I didn't say it out loud, it wasn't real," he admitted. If this story grips you, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Sharing these stories helps shine a light on complex issues that often go unspoken. Finally, the video wraps up with a seamless transition to related content. If you're intrigued by cases like this, we've got more for you. Check out our video on Insert Related Case or Topic, where another shocking secret tore a family apart. Or dive into the story of Insert Another Intriguing Case. We'll see you in the next one.